Welcome to Thursday.
Good day.
Good day.
Yeah.
Good. I'm not gonna do it and try
No.
and do it in Australian
No,
accent. I'm terrible at that. But look, it is day 3 of our discussion this week on marriage restoration, but really strengthening your marriage. We don't want to make the assumption. We said marriage restoration, but we don't want to make the assumption everyone's fighting to save their marriage. But maybe you just want to strengthen your marriage. But all this comes down to on this discussion, how heart disease affects relationships, maybe not even just marriages, but any relationship, and what to do about that.
And that's a good point, because you don't have to have a strained marriage or a strained marriage to what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. I'm trying to
formulate the words.
But you could have a good marriage, and but once you have this strike you, or once you have this in your life, heart disease, it takes things to a whole different dynamic.
Totally.
And there's things that come out that you didn't expect.
Well, and people, I think a lot of times too, what we've been discussing is that it's not just the marriage that you don't expect to change. Everything's going great, but you're operating in a relationship who you are today, and heart disease changes you. And then you're both operating with totally new, like, pieces to the puzzle, totally new things you're bringing to the table, totally new people, totally new perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're here to talk about, is just kind of like how it affects the marriage, how it affects relationships in general. But before we get too far, I want to make sure that we are all aware of a link. There's a link that I want you to be aware of in the description, and that is going to take you to the YouVersion Bible app or Bible.com on the desktop. So if you click that link in the description, it will prompt you to either download the app on mobile or take you to the website on, you okay? Take you to the website on desktop. But either way, it's going to take you to the study we're actually on, so you don't have to search for the text that we're using for this discussion this week, and you can follow along with us.
I am so sorry.
Okay.
I'm trying to control my cough, and I don't.
It's at the end of it, and it's like
I don't have my own cough button. Something we need to remedy. Or how about not having a cough?
How about not having a cough? Yes.
Anyway, you guys, we wanted just to welcome you, first of all, to today's broadcast. And if you are new to us and you don't know us, my name is Javie. This is my wife.
I'm Jessica.
And we are with Underdog Ninja Foundation. We formed this nonprofit foundation with one mission, and that is to help people that are fighting heart disease. And how we do that, we have 3 things that we stand on and we believe in truthfully, and that is faith, character, and action. And those aren't just words. That's why we are here every Tuesday through Saturday morning to share God's word in a way and have a discussion about how God is, and our faith in him is affected through this disease, and how through that we can receive clarity, healing, perspective, moving forward in our life. Then through that helps build that character, but all that comes together with action. And by doing these things, these are the steps that you take in order to find yourself with a fulfilling life, a life that you're able to live your life with and beyond heart disease. You're no longer defined by the disease. You find yourself again. You find out who you are and who you want to be. Look, when you're first diagnosed, when you go through a major event, you really start to rethink things in your life, right? And sometimes we have trouble recalibrating ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And we believe that it starts here, this foundation, and that's our faith.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important to us that we do this every morning. Every morning, Tuesday through Saturday.
Absolutely. And by the way, it is at 8 a.m. Did you say 8 a.m. Pacific time is when we do our discussions here? But Gainer's here, and it is not 8 a.m. for Gainer. You are in the UK, so it's 8 hours. So I can't do maths. So I think it's 4 o'clock.
Did you say maths?
Yeah, maths. Yeah.
Okay.
That's like the interwebs. I just make up words. It's fine.
Mm.
So happy sunny Thursday. It is sunny today. Our kids already went outside and ran around this morning because it's summer here in the Pacific Northwest. And the first thing they did, they usually are like, can we turn on the TV and wake up? Like, you know, and it's because it's like the dark night of our soul because it gets dark at like 4 p.m. Like it doesn't get light until like 9 in the morning. But in the summertime, it's bright like all the time. So they came out this morning, first thing out the back door, talking to the birds and everything. It was the first thing they did.
It's the best medicine for our girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so great that now that, you know, she's come out of
of our daughters.
She's come out of the illness.
Yeah.
And she's feeling great.
She's in the best mood all the time.
She's been in a great mood, and I just praise God for that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so it's been a good medicine for them to be able to go outside because I mean, imagine that she had gotten better when it was still cold and yucky out. Like, you know, she's still stuck inside and everything. Yeah. So this has been really nice. Yeah. Gainer says 4 p.m. Exactly. Oh, I did it. I did it in my head. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, what we're talking about.
She has a cheat sheet actually, she has right now.
I have a cheat. I don't have a cheat sheet. Gosh. Do you trust me? I don't have. So are you good?
Yeah.
So make sure you're good before I move on. Okay.
Yeah.
All coughed out. All right, cool.
Ready?
It's like you have the plague. Just never goes away. So today we're talking about keeping it down. So this is an interesting title, Keep It Down. And you'll understand what that means in a minute because I had to read into it just a little bit. I was like, what does that mean? So we're going to talk about keeping it down today when it comes to how we're interacting in our marriages, in our relationships, and when adversity comes. So let's jump into it. I didn't get a chance to share this screen beforehand, so give me just a second. Technology. Okay, here we go. So keeping it down. So while I watched a famous mafia movie, I noticed that when life and death decisions were made, the Godfather did not shout, jump up and down, or even turn red. He usually just spoke above a whisper. I have noticed people who are really in charge do not have to go through a bunch of gyrations to get results. All they have to do.
What mafia movie he's talking about?
Yeah. The day of my daughter's wedding. I've never seen it. Anyway, so it's so good. All they have to do is say the word, right? So in Matthew 8, a Roman soldier says to Jesus, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. In other words, this soldier understood power. He didn't need to see a lightning bolt or feel the ground shake. He just needed the word spoken from someone who had the authority. This truth really hit home for me when the Lord spoke to me after getting frustrated with my 2 children. He said, if you have authority, you do not have to yell. Oops. Our society likes to put emphasis on those who make calls, give orders, and exhibit the type A dominant characteristics of a leader. However, this isn't the leadership model that we see in the Bible. At the Last Supper, Jesus said, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. The Son of God, who had more authority than anyone else, demonstrated and solidified it by washing his disciples' feet. Let's reframe our concept of authority and how it is played out as we lead our families. So this is obviously not talking just about marriage, right? So that's what I love about it. Matthew 8:8-9 says, but the officer said, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come into my home. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say, go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it. Luke 22:24-30 says, then they began to argue among themselves, and who would be the greatest among them? And Jesus told them, in this world, the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you, it will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leader should be like the servant. Who is more important, the one who sits at the table or the one who serves? The one who sits at the table, of course, but not here, for I am among you as one who serves. You have stayed with me in my time of trial, and just as my Father has granted me a kingdom, I now grant you the right to eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So I love this is talking about authority. When we're in relationships, especially when things hit us hard, like adversity, like we're talking about heart disease, right? So when heart disease hits our family, really, let's talk about, first of all, anything that we would normally be doing gets compromised. All of a sudden, we're either yelling or snapping at people or being short because we don't feel good or we don't know what's going on or we're confused or we're afraid. Man, with parenting, I love how this talks about parenting. I definitely have, been the person who feels like I need to be heard in order to be listened to. Over the years, it has gotten continuously better and better and better, where I don't really even need to raise my voice ever. Like, it's kind of great because I've gotten better and better at understanding that, I have to set boundaries and rules, and I almost never have to raise my voice. Once in a while, I'll be like, hey, everybody, hey, everybody. I can't talk. But it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think same thing for you is you're the same person as me with this. It's like we have our tempers or whatever, and we have, we exert our authority. But it's been nice over the past several years because we just haven't had to do that. We just are like much calmer. God's put a peace in us. He's put a peacefulness in us, and this stabilization of our authority and our kind of our tribe of our family. And it's just become something that, our girls know that it's what it is, and they know the rules. And the only time we really have to raise our voice is when nobody's listening, and they're like, literally are just like, we're like, hello, anybody home? But just like yelling just to yell has become less and less and less and less. I really love that this is talking about how the essence of authority isn't the sound of your voice. It's your role. It's your status, right? So if you have already determined this, you don't need to raise your voice or make a big, kerfuffle, if it's a good word. Yeah. So in a marriage, though, that still applies. So people all of a sudden feel like they need to exert all this great emotion at each other to get the point across, and we don't. In fact, we don't even have necessarily authority over each other. It's more about, I think, authority over, control over ourselves, authority over a situation. So does that make sense what I'm trying to get at? It's sort of like when we're talking, let me give an example because I feel like I'm not being clear there. When we're talking, we don't talk like we have authority over each other. It's more about, I have control over myself and my stance. Like, I have authority over what I'm saying. And so I say it with confidence. I guess I'm really talking about confidence. So when we don't feel like we have confidence over our stance or our point or our position in the marriage, we feel like the other person lords over us or something like that. You feel like you've got to be loud and like you have to like stand your ground, and you have to you have to
puff yourself
to puff yourself up. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. I'm like, how do I explain this? And we don't have to do that because we've both established our confidence and authority in our position, in the position that we've agreed that we are in, which also changes. It varies depending on our season in life. You know what I mean? So it just is holding our ground of where we're at. And we don't do that by yelling and making a huge thing. It is what it is. And so when we say something, it's from a place of authority. I take care of these certain tasks and he takes care of these certain tasks. And so like you take care of landscaping. So you're talking about landscaping. Like, I'm not over here to have an opinion. Like, you're asking me, but you're the authority over that in our house, and it is what it is. And you don't have to be like, listen, I'm trying to make a point about landscaping. Like, it sounds funny when I say it like that, but that's just a silly example, but it could be the money. It could be the kids. It could be, things that a role that you've determined for each other, or you don't have any good communication and there's no roles and there's no structure and there's no, predetermination of where everyone stands. And that's what happens is heart disease hits and all that is put kind of like to the test. Everything's kind of unstable now because we as people are unstable because we're not sure what's going to happen. So everything feels unstable and we have to feel like we got to get ground. And so we overreact, like it's not valid, but emotionally we react largely to things because we're scared. For our kids, there's been times where we've yelled at our kids strictly based on fear. Yeah. In fact, I've even realized after when I explained to my kids, you know what? I'm sorry I yelled. I'm yelling at you right now because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that you're going to get hurt. I'm afraid. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to Because I'll admit when I'm wrong to my kids all the time. I'm just like, you know what? I yelled and I shouldn't have. Like, I was just afraid of you getting hurt, and I just wanted you to hear me, and I didn't need to do that.
So we act out in
fear.
Mm-hmm. We act out in frustration. And let's think. My whole point is, let's think about when we yell.
Why do we do that?
Why do we yell?
Fear, for sure.
Fear,
like for sure.
Frustration.
Yep.
Right?
Insecurity.
That's the whole puffing up thing.
That's
right?
Insecurity is a big one.
Why are we puffing up? You know, why are we trying to boom our voice and get louder and louder? Is puffing up. That's that insecurity.
That's real because you're not secure in your position.
Right. So are those traits of God?
No. No.
Is that something that Jesus would have done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, Monica. Good morning.
Good morning. I think when Jesus was angry, he just acted upon it. Right?
Yeah, it was action, not necessarily screaming. Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. When I was younger, definitely yelled to try to get a point or try to show leadership. That was that was me being naive, and that was me not knowing any better, because that's how things. That's how I was taught, you know. Well, and that's what leaders. That when you look at leaders, that's what leaders did. And even, you know, I remember, you know, in high school, you know, or in school, the teachers, the coaches, you know, in order to get a point across or get you to do something, they would yell. In high school, my wrestling coach,
especially coaches,
right? He would yell, do this, and yell, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it was very rare to get the coach to acknowledge you in a way that you've done well. I mean, it was very rare, because most of the time he was yelling. He even had this. I remember this. To this day, I remember this scowl on his face. Right,
it's burned into your memory.
So that's what those are your, especially for guys. That was my example.
Yeah.
But as growing older, I realized that, and I wish I would have realized this a lot sooner, because I probably scarred a lot of children, my older children and my nieces and nephews, unfortunately. But I thought that's how I led. That's how you laid down authority. Instead, now I realize it's by example.
Well, not only by example, but you can be, when you have a true authority in a room or in a situation or in a relationship, or just maybe you're not in an authoritarian position, like, you know, and we're in a marriage, so it's not necessarily like I have authority over you, but confidence and security, right? You don't have to ever raise your voice. Like, you just are. It is what it is. The authority is there. It's not because you're puffing it up. It exists on its own. The authority is respected. But let's talk a little bit about, I want to bring up, you make a good point. What we really need to dig in today is, why do we react this way? Why do we do this? There's a lot of old tapes and a lot of stuff that happens growing up that I know for you and I heavily played into why we used to be that way.
Right. My whole point is that's those traits played into the fear. Well, I'm going to lay into fear. I'm going to stoke fear into someone. I'm going to show very openly my frustration, right? My anger, my impatience, all these things that aren't the traits of God, rather than how he really wants us to lead is with in authority, is with love and peace and kindness and integrity, right? Good characteristics, humbleness.
Yeah.
So if I need someone, you know, if I want my kids to respect someone, then I need to respect people too.
Yeah.
And we
I
talked
see what
about
you're
that
saying.
the other day.
So, yeah.
If I want them to be more, if I want them to be more responsible with their chores, I need to be responsible with my chores. I can't be sitting on the couch. Hey, you do this, this, and this, and this.
Right.
No, they need to see me doing that same thing.
Right.
So they have those same type of work ethics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I can't be again sitting on the couch eating a bunch of junk food and trying to lecture my kids on, hey, you need to work out, you need to exercise, you need to lose weight,
You need to be healthy.
I can't do that and be on the couch and expect them to fall in line, right?
Well, one of the so you make really good points. I'm sorry if I interrupted you before you were done with your point, but you were talking about example. But another facet of that example that I was starting to get into is that it's not just that. It's not just the example that is what's going to establish our authority. It's not just that. That it's this playing against us. I was going to talk about the other part of it, which is when you were talking about growing up, and this is the same thing for me. It's the old tapes and the old things that play into why we end up why do we even fall into that? So understanding our propensity to fall into yelling or trying to establish authority or needing to be heard or having the insecurities, in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. When we grew up, neither one of us felt heard. Like we felt like because of the chaos around us growing up, because of the situations that we grew up in, there was no control over that. There was so much chaos. So we have felt like we had to take control of something, and because we had no control over anything, and we were subject to whatever chaos was happening around us. Everybody else was making decisions for us because we were children, but there was no stability, right? Mm-hmm. So we didn't feel heard, and so we went through life for a long time, feeling like we needed to be heard. So not feeling like we had any authority or control over anything. And so we would have to force that issue, have to be heard in the room of chaos, right? So those are things that people carry. That's just one example. People carry into situations. Maybe it's from a previous marriage. Maybe it's from your childhood. Maybe it is from a traumatic experience. People come back from serving overseas in the military with PTSD. And now they have reactions to things that are very different than maybe what we would have here, just civilians just living regular life. So we have to think about, why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we feel like we need to carry out this reaction or this, interaction, right? But then also understand that the importance of our reaction or interaction, the example is more important than the reaction, right? The reaction is not getting us anywhere, is his point. The reaction isn't getting, but we also have to dig into why we're doing it, because we won't ever understand how to stop it if we don't understand why we're even reacting that way. Do we still feel like we don't have control? Do we still feel anything? No, we don't feel any of those things. Okay, well then understand that I'm just reacting this way because it's a pattern. Sometimes we have patterns that are from old things, and we are passing those on to our kids, passing those on to a spouse, passing those on to our coworkers. And that's our example, is old crap. Mm-hmm. And so when adversity comes, think about this. Maybe you've kind of like grown and you've moved into like a new person. Have you ever noticed that old patterns will rear their ugly head immediately when adversity comes? This is why we have to identify old patterns, because they're in there. Okay, we've changed, we've moved on, but have we really changed who we are? Like how we operate inside, what's in here? Have we healed? Have we addressed the issues at the core? Or did we just change our habits because our environment was stable and we were able to just change our habits and kind of how we interacted? Because when adversity comes, I've seen this a million times. Heart disease hits the scene. All of a sudden, everything's all in chaos again. And your interaction with people and your reaction to chaos, not you, but anyone, is all of a sudden, you click into like old habits, old patterns, old reactions. because it feels familiar. Oh, I'm in chaos. I don't have control over anything. Ah, and then you have to like yell and you have to take control of the situation and your authority and your point and your like. I've seen people do this in their marriages. I've seen it. They're like, all of a sudden this person is all over me, or all of a sudden they're freaking out. All of a sudden they're angry all the time. These are old reactions possibly.
Right. So, that's so true. And what happens is when we lean upon those old reactions, those old reactions based out of fear, anger, frustration, impatience, isn't it funny when those things are left unthrottled, and afterwards when it all cools down, we're like, what did we do?
What happened?
Why did I do that? Why did I say that? We lose control. We lose clarity, right? We lose control of the situation. We say things to people we don't even mean because we're angry, we're frustrated. We let that just get the best of us. Yet the things, God's traits that we let just get out of control, if we say things and lead with more trust and understanding, more love and more peace, we have more we can be high on that, but yet have control and clear visibility of the situation. We could be, the thing is we could be so angry, red in the face. I mean, the only thing we see is red, and we don't even see the obvious that's standing right in front of us. The enemy wants us there. Understand that. The enemy wants us right there because then we don't see what's in front of us. Then there's chaos. Then there's damage. Then everything that he wants everything that he wants us to do, we're more manipulated, right? We have our guards down. That's not when we're the strongest. That's when we're the weakest. The world will tell you that's showing authority. That's strength. That is power. No, it's not. That's not
just
true.
Noise.
It's just noise, and it's just losing control. Look. I love how it opened with The Godfather. Yeah. Because The Godfather, he was the most respected, even by his enemies. He was the most respected person in the room. Right. Yet everybody else is losing control, even like his son. He's hot-headed and makes all kinds of judgment calls and makes all kinds of mistakes because of his hot-headedness, his arrogance, his pride. Yet he's not the most respected person in the room. The most respected person in the room is the person that's the quietest. And the person that's the quietest observes everything. The person that is the quietest has control of the room. Why? Because he's not falling into the trap of negative emotion. He can see everybody else's overreaction, and he could see the true source of the problem, because he's not allowing all these other things to cloud the whole point.
Remember, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the kids' cartoon movie, the animated movie Zootopia. Remember in Zootopia, they had like a spin on The Godfather. Yeah. And the kids wouldn't know what this is. They were like, "That's funny." But it's they go and they're looking for Mr. Big, right? The detectives are like Mr. Big, and they're looking for him. And it turns out to be like a spin on The Godfather, right? All of these big like polar bears it's all animals. All these polar bears walk into this room, this office, and they're like waiting for Mr. Big. And they're like, "Is that Mr. Big?" And he's like, "No." And this, because one of the detectives had never seen these people and one of them has. And so she's asking him, she's like, "Is that Mr. Big?" And another polar bear comes in, right, with sunglasses on. They're like all like bodyguards, right? "Is that Mr. Big?" No. They're waiting for another polar bear to come in. And this polar bear walks in. She's like, "Is that Mr. Big?" And he's like, "No." Right? And the third polar bear walks in and sets this like tiny like box or desk or whatever down. No, it was a chair with a little rat in it. like he's this big. This is Mr. Big, right? And he talks like the Godfather. He's like, right? Like he's a little like mouse or rat. He's clearly could be squashed by any polar bear in the room, but he's the most respect. He's like the Godfather. He's got like a little daughter who like it's his daughter's wedding, just like the Godfather, and she's has a little Jersey accent. It's so funny. Anyway, we laugh every time we watch it with the kids, but it's just like that. I mean, it's really a great picture of like you could be clearly not the biggest person in the room, but the one that's in control, the one that's in control of yourself. That's really when you have the most authority. The person who has the most control over themselves has the most authority because you're not the one acting on emotion. You're not the one that is acting on, just fight or flight instinct. Like you're not just reacting, you're being proactive, really. You're responding. There's a difference between reacting and responding, by the way. And I want to talk a little bit about that. In a relationship, we don't want to just react, which is just like, I'm just reacting. Like I'm just emotionally reacting. I'm just verbally reacting, right? Or I'm just throwing something, or I'm just physically reacting. Reacting is something that's just it's a reaction. That's all it is. It is just a quick and not thought through response. To respond to something can be many things. That can be a clear and concise like response. It could be an action. It could be how do you respond to what life throws at you? Do you respond with positivity? Do you respond with a equal and positive reaction? Like I know I said reaction, but response. Does that make sense? Like, well, I've got heart disease, so my response should be changing my habits. Should be helping other people with heart disease. Should be, asking God, what should my response be? What should I do in my life? What should my life look like in response to this adversity? Reacting could easily be just construed as anger, emotion, whatever. While we all go through those things, I just wanted to point out that in a conversation, like in a marriage or in a relationship, do we want to just have reactions or do we want to actually wait until we're ready to respond?
Well, and
same thing with parenting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what I was kind of driving towards too, is with heart disease, how are you facing heart disease? Are you allowing the emotions in the disease to overtake you? The fear, the frustration, the anger, those are all real emotions that we feel, especially after recovery. After we're trying to figure out who we are and how are we going to move forward. We feel like our life has been taken away from us. We feel that this is, we don't know if we're going to have tomorrow. I had dreams, I had hopes. Now those things are all gone, or we've had overwhelming guilt because now we feel that we're at the end.
Right.
And we aren't able to provide or be there for our family, be there for our spouse.
Be the person we wanted to be.
Right.
We think.
And so, or our spouse won't look at us the same. So we get all caught up in these negative emotions, right? And we let those flames of those negative emotions just build up and build up and build up. Pretty soon, that's the only thing we see. We don't see what the obvious in front of us. What we need to do is step back, cool down. We have to back off of that fear and understand it's just an emotion. And I look, I'm not saying those things lightly. I know emotions are heavy.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know that. But we need to allow these positive things, these positive thoughts back into our mind, our spirit, in order to get perspective. You want to know how to get better. You want to know where you're going. You feel lost. You feel you're in a dark place. You need to know. You want to know how to find that light again. You need to be in peace. You need to be quiet.
Right.
You need to quiet yourself. Look up. Look for the light.
There's a reason that scripture says, be still and know that I am God.
Right.
He doesn't go crazy and throw a party and know that I'm God. No, it's too much noise. It's too much chaos. Be hysterical and know that I'm God.
And I'll slap you across the face. No.
Be still. He's like, keep it down. This is called keep it down today, right?
And that's the action piece into it. Your action piece is to calm down, right? Mm-hmm. To get control of yourself. But I'm scared, but I'm fearful. I don't know what's happening. This pain, what
does it mean?
What does it mean? Does it mean I'm going to have another heart attack? Be still and
right.
Trust. And look, I'm not taking this lightly. I understand. Take it from somebody that's been there. The best way, you're not going to get anywhere by focusing on your fear. You're not going to get anywhere by thinking that every day is your last. Mm-hmm. That's not where God wants you to be. You should live your day like you, in one way, in a positive way, you should be living your day like it's your last. You should be doing God's work, but you can't do God's work if you're living through fear.
Right. Or if you're focused on just yourself.
If your characteristics that you're living your life, the things that you're basing your life on right now is based on the things of the enemy, not of God, that is anger, that is fear, that is bitterness, that is guilt, that is shame. If you're living your life that way, are you living your life for God or the way God wants you to be? Live your life the opposite. Like I said, through love, through peace, through joy, through happiness. How do you find that? By being still and listening to him. And then he will give you clarity. Mm-hmm. And look, I'm talking about the disease here. I'm talking about how we manage this disease and the emotions. But that plays into the marriage. Because when we are operating in those negative things, the bitterness, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the fear, that all projects into the relationship. Mm-hmm. So if we want a more peaceful life, then we need to start to be peaceful. If we want a more loving relationship, we need to be acting in love.
Right. If you want to see love, you need to be love. Mm-hmm. Okay. But yeah, so we're talking about relationships today, but all of that, you're right. All of that plays into the relationship. Obviously, a relationship is between two people and whatever the people bring to the table. So if you're bringing all that stuff to the table, that's what you're going to get. I mean, that's what your relationship is going to be built on. You're bringing building blocks to the table and saying, here is my contribution to this relationship. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's what I'm bringing to the table. Okay, well, if that's what you're bringing to the table, then you can't expect to build a solid foundation if you're building it on shame, guilt, fear, and anger. Mm-hmm. Those are very unstable bricks. Okay, they're not bricks at all. It's like, you're building it on marshmallows or whatever. Like it's not stable. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too is we're talking a lot about the disease. We're talking a lot about. We're focusing on the disease. We're focusing on,
One second. I need to.
You okay? Okay. Thanks for pausing.
Yeah, I'm trying to be polite.
Okay. Anyway, so we're focusing on the disease a lot, but here's the thing: do we really want to focus on the disease all the time? Do we want to focus on that? Because I understand that comes into your conversations, obviously, especially if it's new. It's like all the conversations, right? What do we do? We're trying to figure out, how do we interact? How do we move forward? Well, we always talk about this. This is one of the number one ways to build out of trauma or build out of something negative or that's adversity, right? Is to look at what replaces that. So always be replacing something that's negative with something positive. Always be replacing it. Focusing on the negative and trying to avoid the negative never fixes the negative. You can't just avoid negative stuff. You can't just avoid negative thoughts. You can't just avoid negative or unhealthy food. You have to replace it with good food. You have to replace it with something. So it's always that way. You have to put it in something else in its place. So in order to move forward, otherwise the negative, there's always a space left there for the negative. You can't just kick the negative out and then leave a space. There's going to be a space there for it. And especially when it comes to our thoughts. So when it comes to what we're focused on, that's the other thing I was going to say is when you are still, when you're stable, and when you're quieting down and understanding, like, I've got to talk to God about this, and kind of getting control over your emotions, then you can actually focus. You can actually focus on anything. And when you quiet down as a couple and say, all right, this is hard and we don't understand it and it's a lot and we need to accept this is more than we can take on right now. So what are we going to do? We need to build, what do we want? We want a life. So what kind of life do we want? What kind of life do we want, no matter whether we have heart disease in the picture or not? Okay. If we're both still here, nobody died, we have a second chance. What are we building on this foundation? How are we treating heart disease like the stepping stone that is going to lift us up or catapult us up into the life that we truly want? Now, that might be a different version of that than you thought it would be, as it always is with God. And it might be a different version based on the fact that there's heart disease in the picture. But if you never focus on the life you want to build on heart disease or around heart disease or in spite of it or whatever, maybe it's the life you want to build because of heart disease, because you finally can, because there's a stepping stone there like we've talked about. It's the reason, it's the catalyst you can make these better, healthy decisions because you finally have the motivation to do so. Whatever the case may be, you're never going to get that life if you don't focus on that. If you're always focused on heart disease, I'm just elbowing you, sorry. If you're always focused on the disease and never the life that you want to live, then you're never going to live a life. You're just going to focus on the disease.
Yeah.
You're going to live a disease.
Yeah.
And that's really what I was trying to get to is you can't just focus on the disease all the time. We talk a lot about it because there's a lot of facets to it. There's a lot of angles. There's a lot of pieces, moving parts that we have to deal with, thoughts, habits, relationships, all these things we talk about. But really, when it comes down to it, whether we're talking about nutrition, fitness, stress management, lifestyle, relationships, finances, any of it, anything you deal with in your life, even spiritual health, okay, with God, if you don't focus on what you want to have, what you're building towards, and I'm not just talking about goal setting. What picture do you want to live? How do you want your life to be with God? How do you want your life to be with your spouse, with your kids, with your health? Build towards that, because I've seen it 1,000 times, and so have you. You've seen it in every inspiring story you've ever seen. We are able to overcome so much more than we think, and definitely more with God. But we'll never do that if we're not focused on it, if we don't see it, if we don't look towards that. If we're only head down, looking at the disease and what's not possible, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen, because you're not even focused on building anything. You're not focused on being resourceful. You're not looking up and looking around at the situation. You're not quiet enough to see and focus and be still to actually see the big picture. You're not, you know what I'm saying? You're consumed by your emotions. You're consumed by what's not possible. You're consumed by the barriers and by the miscommunications,
right,
and the chaos. And you don't get anywhere. And that's where we find ourselves one day. It's like, oh, wow, how did I get here? Well, stop what you're doing. Accept it for what it is. Okay. We're all humans. We've all found ourselves in this situation at one point or another. And then go, what do I want? And as a couple, what do we want? Get over here together, right? Get this situation out in front of both of you. Both of you chill out and go, all right, let's forget about everything we're feeling or saying or thinking or whatever. What is it that we want? You want to know how your spouse has changed so much and with heart disease and they're a different person? Ask them what they want. What do you want? What do you want our life to look like? Because right now we're just spinning around in this, and this isn't working. And I don't know who you are now. And I'd like to get to know whoever this is. And I'd like to understand it. I'd like to understand who you are, what's happening. I want to understand what happened to you. I want to understand how I can be a good part of this relationship now, even though I used to be, but now it's different.
And when you do that, you have to be willing to lay down all those other negative emotions before you come back to that table. Okay. You cannot, and that has to be a rule. You cannot bring back the past hurt, the
past at all.
Bring back what he or she said to you in that. You can't bring back the previous argument Okay.
Right.
The bitterness, the anger.
Or the way you think they're going to respond.
Or any of that.
Yeah.
Let's bring things to a clean slate. It has to be a clean slate, and bring it back to like what we were talking about yesterday, about understanding that you guys are in the same boat here.
Mm-hmm.
And by feeding on the anger and the frustration is like taking a shotgun to the bottom of the boat.
Yep.
You're just helping the boat to sink.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the work of the enemy. So fine, take a breather, kind of get some perspective.
Right.
Let all that cool down. But when you come back together and you do exactly what Jess said, there's got to be some ground rules there. You can't bring up this past. You got to be willing to let go of it. And look, I know.
Just move forward.
I know it might be hard because there may have been some harsh things, but that's exactly where the enemy wants you. You can't let go of that. He said this about you. You can't let go of that because it's real, isn't it? Aren't you scared? Right? So he's whispering in your ear that all those negative emotions, you can't let go of that. Remember this, remember that. You got to resist that.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be right back where you started. How many times have you tried to do exactly what she said and said, oh, that sounds great, but we always end up back in an argument? Why? Because somebody is always willing to bring back the past.
Whether it's you or them.
Or bring back onto the table the bitterness. Okay, we fall into that too.
Oh yeah, we've had conversations where we're like, yeah, what are we even doing in this conversation?
Right.
Yeah.
We'll try to move forward, and I'll be the one to say that. I'll say it. I'll be. Wait a second. You just said this, this, and this. Wait. And then somebody, either you or me, is like, I have to say, well, that was yesterday or that was before. We're trying to move forward, right?
Yeah. And it's funny too. You got to understand, if you're actually doing the work you should be doing in your marriage, you change. You should change. We change together. Mm-hmm. We're different people. There's been funny things. Like when I was younger, okay, so this is, you got to understand, there's all kinds of ways that we miscommunicate. It's not just in adversity. There's been times where I'm like, oh, I love flowers. Right? Oh, this was recent. I love flowers. And he's like, you do? Because I don't ever buy you flowers because you said you don't want me to. And I go, when did I tell you I don't want you to buy me flowers? Like every girl wants flowers. He goes, I'm telling you. And that's funny because I actually think I remember this now. I'm telling you, he goes, you had a conversation. He's like, I just want to read your clues. Like, I'm not really a big clue person. I'm just straight. Like, I'll just tell you. I'm not trying to like hint and be like, so maybe, whatever. I just say stuff. So it's really clear. And that's a good thing. But then he'll take that. And then it's that until he knows otherwise. Right. So years go by. I guess a long time ago, I had said something. I think it was probably in the very beginning of our relationship. It has to be because I barely remember.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. So I said something about like, well, I'd much rather you buy me something that lasts because flowers just die. And
it's just stupid.
It's just stupid. Now, okay. Knowing me, and especially knowing who I used to be, I 100% assumed that the reason I would have said something so dumb is because he was debating on whether he wanted to know what kind of stuff I like. Right. Now, if I'm debating between, would you rather me buy you a gift or would you rather me buy you flowers? It also probably had to do something with either past issues or people I knew or like a girlfriend that, would rather have flowers than a gift. And I'm like, I'd much rather, if you're going to buy me something for a holiday or for something, I overreacted and said, I'd much rather have this because it's something I can use. I can last, flowers are just stupid. They die. It's whatever. You don't worry about doing that. And then he didn't for like a decade. And then I just in passing mentioned
followed your orders.
In passing, he goes, well, and he's the person that always wants to spoil me. He always wants to do loving things. He always wants to make me happy. And that's how I am with him. And that's how we are. So him finding out that this whole time I would have loved flowers and he didn't buy them for me. Now he's like, great. So this whole time I was doing what I thought you wanted and you wanted flowers and I failed. I was like, no. I wasn't like resentful this whole time.
That was very upsetting to me.
I know, but I wasn't resentful. I wasn't like, this whole time you could have been buying me flowers and I just expected him and you never did it. Nah, I'm not like that. He always over delivers. It's not like, but it was so funny because he's like, wait, what? His eyes got all big. He's like, you're telling me this whole time? And I was like, well, I probably said something stupid, but I was a different person. I never would have said that now. I'd have been like, I want you to buy me what you want. Now I said, I want you to buy me what you want to buy me. Because I know that it's all about you wanting, it's the intention, you wanting to make me happy. He always laughs. He's like, he just bought me a food processor for Mother's Day. It's something we've been wanting to get because we have this Vitamix and it doesn't do the stuff the food processor does. And I need a food processor. I don't need everything to be a romantic gift. I don't care. Our 10-year anniversary is tomorrow. And we've talked about, what do we want to get for our anniversary? And we've talked about all these practical gifts, and he's like, that's not really a 10-year anniversary gift. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't care. Like, I need a new hair straightener. Like, it's the intention that he wants to do something for me. And I said, babe, it's all about, you're my 10-year anniversary gift all the time. Our marriage, I know, is rare. What we have, most people don't have. And I know that that's a gift from God. That's all day long. And it's not because we're amazing at marriage. It's not because, sure, now we've gotten way better at this. We work really hard on this. Okay. But we aren't who we are together just because, we're amazing at it. It's because God has provided something for us in a situation where it's a blessing. And I know that. Okay. So I don't need gifts to like be a certain way, but the whole point of my conversation is that this can be, think about this conversation, how silly it is, but how it could be totally misconstrued. It was something you heard me say years ago. My original point was people change. And so I'm different now. And you're like going off of old information. But that's a small thing. That's a light thing. Well, I say a small thing. Some people, this is like a deal breaker. But think about the heavy stuff. Well, the you I used to know would have reacted to this kind of situation differently. You would have done this, you would have done that. So their expectations of the person are totally off center from what they actually end up doing. How does your spouse or your partner react in an emergency?
Yeah.
How do you know? Like, we know because we've been through a lot of emergencies, but not everybody knows that. And so
Right.
they're like, anybody's just reacting in an emergency the way they do. And then all of a sudden you're berating your spouse over how they interacted with you or reacted in an emergency. How do we know until we're in one? We don't, and we just react, right? So there's all these things that you think you know about the person. This is why yesterday we talked about communication being the key. It's the big kahuna, we said, right? That communication can fix or break everything. Everything. And by the way, that includes with God.
Yes.
Your communication or lack of communication with God will fix or break everything.
That's where it starts with that third strand, right? Yep. That's where we build 100%. The strength. The third strand is the final strand. That is where the strand is. That's where the strongest is. That's the core of it all. Of the rope. Yep. Right? So when everything else fails, you always have that third strand to hold on that holds everything together. Yep.
And that's been God in our marriage the whole time.
So our communication, our building of our faith, our time that we spend in God, with God, that's where that's where the investment needs to be. That's where our first stop needs to be, because that's the strongest point of the cord in your relationship. So why are we neglecting it? Why are we not nourishing it? Because there's going to be a time in your life, in your relationship, that you're going to need that strength.
Lots of times.
Right? You're going to need it. And if you neglect it, it's not going to be there. Not that God's not going to be there. It's not going to be strong enough to lean upon. You're not going to know.
If you don't build it. Yeah.
Right? You won't have that clear understanding. You won't have that perspective. You won't know how to come back from this adversity.
Yeah.
Or,
it's like if we had a friend that we needed in an emergency situation. So which friend are we going to have show up for us to like take our kids if we have an emergency or something? Is it the friend that we met a week ago and we kind of barely know? Or is it the friend that we've known for years, but we don't talk to them anymore? Or we barely ever talk to them? Or is it the person that we've nurtured our friendship with? like crazy, and they're close with us, and they're going to show up. That's it.
Right.
It's not just because they're a certain type of friend. It's because we have worked on the friendship and we've communicated with them and we have poured into that relationship. Hello. And that's the same for God. It doesn't mean God won't show up for you, but you're not going to have that relationship with him where you're going to be able to take advantage of the closeness you have with him. Look, God's always right here. We're the ones that put the hand out in the space, the distance. God's only as far away as you make him. Okay. So God will show up for you. He doesn't change. Nothing about God ever changes. He's who he is. Okay. That's it. God is God. This entity, God, is and has always been and will always be the same. We change. We push God away. We welcome him in. We vacillate, right? In our relationship. So unlike having a friendship with a human where it's another imperfect being who also has to pour into the relationship, it's a little bit different. God is always there no matter what. It's how much do we invite him in to have that relationship so that we can have that focus and hearing him. That friend, let's say that friend that we talked about has all the answers. They know a lot about a lot, but we don't ever talk to them. We don't ever get their expertise. We don't ever understand. We don't get their point of view. We don't get their counsel.
Therefore, we don't know that they have the answer.
We never asked. That's how it is with God. So that would be a better example, is that, we don't end up having that intel because we never asked. We never talked to the person. They're like, you're like, you didn't tell me? What do they say?
You never asked.
You never asked.
Right. That's so true. Hey, look, guys, we're gonna let you guys go. We could probably go on for a little while longer, but I really hope you guys are getting something out of today. I know, again, we're talking about marriages and and this may not be relevant to you because you're not in a relationship like that. But this is really more about how we're facing relationships while we're fighting this disease. Okay. We feel isolated. We feel alone many times. Why is that? That's where the enemy wants you. That's where the enemy wants you to think that you are alone. You're not alone. And so this whole week, we're talking about, yes, we are talking about marriage and the dynamic of things, but we're talking about how we manage relationships, period, really. You could take these lessons and apply it to anything. But I hope you guys got something out of today. And if you've missed the previous days in this series, please go back. And, if you, like I said, if you would go ahead, if you got something out of it, hit like, share this with your friends and family. We'd really, really appreciate it. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I always say this, and I'm going to keep saying it. We can't do this alone. This is not a 2-person mission. Okay. This is something that God called us to start, but this really takes the community to come together and share this with those that are hurting. There's a lot of people out there going through these things, guys, and they're not looking for answers. They don't realize that they're not alone. They think it's just them. They think it's just their spouse. They think it's just their situation.
Right.
We all have felt that before. I'm not the only one. No, we're all humans. We go through all the same stuff. Like, you're not alone. Okay. And sorry, it's not unique. So unfortunately, it's not unique. This is why we talk about it. And so share these discussions, share these series with people that are desperately hurting and looking for, is there anyone out there? Is God out there, right? What's out there that can help me understand why this is happening? Am I crazy? Is this wrong? Are they crazy? What's happening? And so this is something that we need to rely on you guys as a community to share in your social media, share with your friends, send it in a text, whatever you need to do. Make sure that this is in front of those people that really need it, because that's the only way that this mission is going to get out there. And that's what God really called us to do. If you're watching from our YouTube channel, we're live there as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified for our future broadcast, our future content that we post there. Our nonprofit has a whole YouTube channel where we're actually going to have contributors coming in soon, because we are now onboarding our board members. We're getting that going, which is really exciting. And you're going to start to see a lot of changes in the nonprofit and moving forward, and a lot of just really cool things. But
and pray for that. We're trying to grow this YouTube channel, and that's why we're going to bring in other things and have other things there. It's beyond our devotionals. Look, in case you guys don't know this, I know you've been watching our live broadcasts on Facebook, but you can watch these live broadcasts on YouTube. I know some people have been, rather than watching it on their device, they just pull up YouTube on their TV, and they're doing other things and they're watching it on TV. So
hey, Lene,
that's the great thing about YouTube. And then if you subscribe to YouTube or to our channel, you get some of the other content that we will be releasing and that we have released.
Absolutely. And so make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button. And thank you so much for following us there. And we really love your support on our YouTube channel, because that needs to grow as well. So be looking for new things. But otherwise, have a blessed day. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good day, guys.
We'll see you
later.